Let's bust some more Raft myths. Hi friends, and welcome back to Raft. After much popular demand, we're back with another episode of Raft Mythbusting, complete with more insane theories and ideas to put to the test. Despite having over 9 months with a fully released game after 6 years of development, there's still a lot of misconceptions about what's possible in Raft, so we're gonna see what's real and what's not. If you have a myth you'd like me to bust, leave it in the comments below, and check out the previous 2 episodes of the series to see what other myths we've already tested. Also, if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel, it would be much appreciated. But without further ado, let's try busting more Raft myths. If you've looked into some of the more niche details of Raft challenge runs, you'd know that it's impossible to do an oceanless run even just to the first story island due to one small resource: copper. No matter what, you need at least 14 copper ore to reach the radio tower, and the only way to get copper ore early in the game is underwater. You might be led to believe that you could get copper from the chests or crates scattered around large islands or on abandoned rafts, but the earliest copper appears as a dropped item from any loot table is at the 4th story location. You could also argue that it's purchasable from trading posts at tier 2, but those require trash cubes to buy, and you can only get trash cubes from the recycler, which is unlocked at the 1st story island, leading us back to our circular problem that you need to go in the ocean to make any story progress. Unless you can dig it up, that is. After the 4th story location, you unlock the blueprints for the metal detector, which allows you to dig up treasure spots on various islands. While the treasure comes in a few shapes and forms, 2 of them have the possibility to drop copper ore, and treasure is strictly terrestrial, meaning this could be our waterless operator. If this myth is true, all you need is a shovel and some willpower, and the shovel is unlocked normally through the research table, and metal ingots are obtainable from those chests we talked about earlier, meaning that this part would be possible without entering the water. But can you dig up treasure without detecting it first? Each large island has 3 treasure spots, and each small island has just 1. So theoretically, with enough willpower, it would be possible to find that one spot if you dug everywhere on a given island. Just to make this a tiny bit easier, I'm using a mod that allows me to multiply the number of treasure spots per island, so I don't lose my mind combing every island, and this won't affect our theory at all. But even with over 30 treasure spots on the smallest possible landmass, I still could not dig up a single treasure without pulling out the metal detector first, making this myth, and the possibility of a waterless raft run, busted. But if we dig hard enough, though, we can dig up a different kind of treasure. Allow me to introduce you to today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University. This whole ocean floating simulator we know and love started as a university project that 3 of the devs made for one of their courses. That assignment turned into a career and one of the most successful games of 2022. And if you're interested in game development, SNHU is a great place to get your foot in the door. Their online program covers a great range of game dev topics like game AI, physics, and coding languages, and other useful skills that you're gonna need to make a polished game, or help make some of the mods that make videos like this one possible. As a current graduate student myself, I cannot advocate enough for continuing education and building new skills throughout your life. And SNHU provides affordable and accessible introductions to pursuing a passion that could turn into a lifelong career, kind of the same way it did for the Red Beat devs. If you want to know more, feel free to visit snhu.edu/Alidove or click the link in the description. It's completely free to request more info, and taking that first step can be the difference between a simple college assignment and a lifelong career. Our second myth of the day centers around wearable underwater equipment like the oxygen bottle and flippers. The myth states that these objects, while intended for submarine use, will also lose durability when you're vibing above the waves. That may not make a lot of sense from a gameplay perspective, but it does make sense in a real-world lens, considering any equipment you're wearing will take damage, regardless of whether or not you're using it for its intended purpose. Anyways, this myth is super straightforward to test. We'll equip the flippers and the oxygen bottle and then proceed to play the game normally without entering the water for a little while to see if that durability meters go down at all. I'm using pieces of equipment that are assumed to take passive damage, i.e. not armor because that takes durability decay when you take damage, or the zipline that only loses durability when you're on a zipline. It's also worth noting that if you're playing in normal, if you unalive and respawn with 2/3 of your inventory, the tools that you recover will also have durability damage, which is probably the origin of this myth in my opinion. Anyways, after running around on the raft for approximately 20 minutes straight without entering the water, which is more than enough time to deplete these items underwater, we can see that none of our equipment durability has changed at all. The oxygen bottle and the flippers will not consume durability if you're not in the water, which makes this myth thoroughly busted. Myth 3 questions whether or not the environmental whales in this game are invincible. Honestly, I've never thought about unaliving the ambient sea life around our rafts, so I have no clue if this is gonna work, but that's why we're here. Let's see if the whales need saving or if they're fine protecting themselves. There are a few kinds of environmental animals in this game, like a smack of jellies, a small pod of dolphins, a little group of turtles, a stingray, and of course our whale test subjects. Most of these guys have a 150 health pool and will instantly disappear if you deal that much damage, so theoretically the same should apply to the whale. The dolphin hitbox weirdly only applies to the frontmost dolphin, and the same is more or less true for the turtles. The stingray is by itself, so that hitbox checks out, though let's see if the same is true for the whale. Given that these things are large and relatively fast moving, we're going to simplify the damage issue and assume that the whale will have the same 150 HP that the rest of our marine friends do. And just to guarantee that that's not an issue requiring multiple hits, I'm going to use the OP dev weapon to ensure that I can one-shot this whale if it's even possible. The OP weapon is a dev item that deals 99,999 damage per hit, so we're just going to mitigate that possibility entirely. And after a few minutes of chasing around the whale while whacking it with my fancy golden spear, I can safely say that this whale was indeed invincible. It never took any damage from the most powerful weapon in the game, making this myth confirmed. At this point, we've questioned a few variations on the idea that the way you grow your crops will affect the amount of seeds that are returned to you. We've done different plot types, we've done different types of crops, and now it's time to try growing seeds for different time periods. This myth suggests that the longer you let a plant grow for, the more seeds you'll get back. Given that all of the information from this game seems to have seeds as a percentage chance rather than a set number, I'm skeptical that this will work, but we're here to try it nonetheless. I'm excluding trees from this experiment because trees actually drop items in a consistent pattern with a percentage chance to drop seeds every time you hit them with an axe. I've covered trees in more details in other videos if you're curious, but that's why we're only going to be using medium and small crop types for this experiment. For the medium and small crop plots, we'll use 2 crop types that drop seeds in each kind and 5 plots of each seed type. We'll have one of these that will grow for a minimum growth time of 8 minutes after watering, and another group that will grow for 20 minutes, which is more than double the required growth time and close to a full in-game day. We've already proven which plot type you use doesn't change the seed drops at all, so I'm going to use all advanced plots for consistency. I've also rigged up a sprinkler system that will water all of these plants equally at the same time for a given trial, and I'm harvesting as close to our desired time as possible to reduce all the variation that we can. And after 8 and 20 minutes respectively, let's take a look at how well all of our crops did. We grew exactly 20 of each crop type between our 2 time periods, so those crop numbers will remain constant, but we're more interested in the seed drops. According to the wiki, seeds from fruit should drop roughly 2/3 of the time, and if we planted 20 seeds, we should get a return of roughly 13.2 seeds. And that lines up nicely with what we see here on the 8-minute crops, with the exception of the flowers, which drop the full stack of 20 seeds in return. But let's compare those to the 20 minutes. It's pretty much exactly the same, hovering around 14 seeds. Weirdly, we got a low number of pineapple seeds, but that can be chalked up to the variability in the 66% chance of return seeds. Again, we got all of our flower seeds back, so it's true that flowers will always return their seeds, but there wasn't a difference between letting our crops grow for 8 minutes and letting them grow for 20 minutes, meaning the myth of growing your crops longer to get more seeds is definitely busted. This next myth may seem simple at face value, but I'm not entirely certain it's true. The hook is one of Raft's most iconic items. It's the thing you start the game with, and it brings you all of the resources you need to survive in your early days. There's no doubt that the plastic hook is an essential Raft item, but does it limit your gameplay possibilities? There are 3 tiers of hooks in Raft: the starting plastic hook, the mid-tier metal hook, and the endgame titanium hook. There's no doubt that the upgraded hooks are absolutely faster than the simple hook, but that's not what we're here to test. We need to see if they travel further in the water. To test this simple idea, the setup was fairly complicated. I needed a way to mark where my hook landed, and also a way to mark where to throw my hook. In case you didn't know, the angle at which you throw your hook does affect how far it travels, so that needs to be consistent in order for my test to be accurate. To fix this, I made a platform way further out than the hooks could travel with a big pillar on it, and if I always aim at the red bit of the pillar after standing up from my chair, that means that my player position and the angle I'm throwing at are consistent. As for figuring out where the hook lands, this is where my friend the More Trash mod comes in. Basically, this mod allows you to set how much trash is in the water, and that's how we're gonna mark where our hook lands. If I jump in the water after casting my hook from our set position angle, it will only collect the trash that was on my hook at that moment, meaning we'll be left with a hole in the dense debris field. So with that setup explained, let's run the test. Now, while my idea of a point-based test was brilliant, the actual hole left in the debris field was pretty much invisible, so I ended up drawing each of the hooks in to leave a cleared line back to home base, and that lets us visualize the hook travel distance. The plastic hook on the bottom did indeed have a much shorter travel distance than the metal or titanium hooks, but the distance between the two shiny varieties appeared to be negligible. So while it's absolutely true that the metal hooks travel further than the plastic hook, there doesn't seem to be that much benefit to the titanium hook, but I suppose the in-game descriptions were right and this myth is confirmed. By now, it's well known that detail planks are easily one of the most broken items in Raft. You can use them to infinitely stay underwater, clip through boundaries, and build some funky structures, but what if these decoration-focused items could have yet another practical use? Detail planks have a solid hitbox, which is what makes so many of those other exploits work. You know what else has a solid hitbox? Our friend Jeremiah the shark. Because detail planks can be used underwater, there's the potential that they could be used as an alternative to fortifying your foundations the traditional way. It's also worth a quick note that this is completely impractical. By the time you're able to unlock the Tier 3 trading level at the trading posts, you'll have had to make it to the radio tower to unlock the recycler, as well as gathered all of the necessary resources needed to make the receiver and antenna in addition to the recycler itself, meaning you've had access to plenty of metal and scrap and could have fortified your raft to guarantee that same safety of this myth aims to accomplish in the game's intended method a lot faster. That being said, this could be a more aesthetic way to protect a pretty raft without the metal borders ruining your perfect floor, so it's worth testing anyways. We're going to test this myth 2 different ways with varying levels of practicality. First is the most practical version with just a single ring of planks directly against the foundations, which if this myth is going to be worthwhile at all, I feel like this is the only viable layout. Next is the second more practical version with a ring of planks going around like the first version, but also boxy in the bottom. This makes more sense because it's actually fully enclosing the raft, which you would think would block any direct attacks, but it's not exactly the same level of practicality. Also, just for clarification, I'm specifically using a 2x2 raft base in hard difficulty for the greatest chances of the raft being attacked in a consistent pattern. Jeremiah and his extra friends should attack roughly every 5 minutes, so let's get to the test and see how we fare. To put it simply, the detail planks failed miserably at deterring any kind of shark attack. The ring wasn't noticeable at all, but the box did leave me with a pretty lovely floating bathtub once all of the pieces were destroyed. So beyond the fact that this is wildly impractical, it's also impossible, leaving us with yet another myth that's completely busted. If you've kept up to date with my 101 Raft Tip series, you'll know that you can use sprinklers to make some insanely compact and efficient farms that water easily more than 100 crops in a single sprinkler's radius. What's less clear is if this affects the amount of water that a crop plot needs. A sprinkler holds roughly 30 uses of water, and one crop plot or a grass plot theoretically consumes 1 use of water from the sprinkler. And if you're wondering whether or not that means it's more or less efficient than watering by hand, a single cup of water is equivalent to roughly 6 uses, so the sprinkler is at least 6 times more efficient than manual watering. But like I just mentioned, I generally make compact farms with significantly more than 30 crop plots within a sprinkler's 3x3 watering square area. As a quick aside, it's also worth noting that the sprinkler's exact effective area is best described as a full wall height in a 3x3 square when the sprinkler is placed at the half wall height. You can actually water a half-wall layer below where the sprinkler is placed, and a lot of the time that space is completely wasted unless you're elevating your sprinklers and making another layer of farms like this. Just for the sake of testing, I set up 2 of my favorite farm layouts in different styles. This one has just simple small crop plots since they have a smaller hitbox than the advanced ones, and I can fit the most plots in the affected area, making this our high density test. Next, I made what I consider the practical survival farm, with a mix of simple small plots for the smaller hitbox again, and a range of the advanced medium plots because those have smaller hitboxes than the simple ones. And just for consistency, I replicated the small crop plot layout as closely as I could with the advanced small plots. We're going to give each of these farm layouts exactly 1 full sprinkler's worth of water, so 5 cups or 1 full bottle, and see how many plots get watered plus how many plants are grown. Sometimes just the visual water check can be deceiving, so we're mostly going to compare based on harvest. I filled each of the small crop plots with beets because these will always drop just 2 beets when fully grown, so there's no harvest variability, and for the survival farm, we'll just count the pineapples as a simple extra measure. Of course, the simple plots hold 3 plants and the advanced plots hold 4, so with some simple math, we can figure out how many plots were watered. So let's see what we harvested and how much water we used in each farm area. In the simple crop plot area, we got a return of 9 stacks of beets. Divided by 3 for that simple crop plots, that means we watered a total of 30 simple small plots. In the survival area, we got a yield of 7 1/5 stacks of beets plus 24 pineapples, and doing the same math with 3 plants per plot and 4 per pineapple, we again watered a total of 30 plots. Finally, in our area filled with advanced small plots, we got a whopping 22 stacks of beets. Divided by 2 beets per plant and 4 plants per pot, you'll never guess, but this again equals 30 plots watered by a single sprinkler. Therefore, water efficiency is determined by what plots you use, as you can plant more seeds in an advanced plot. However, if water isn't an issue, the simple small plots are significantly more space efficient if you're concerned with having a tiny raft. Regardless of your preferences though, the myth that sprinklers use a consistent amount of water is indeed confirmed. No matter how much I've played this game and how much we already know, there's always more to test and more questions to answer, so if you have other myths you want me to check out, please leave them in the comments below. Anyways, I think that's it for me for now. Thank you again to SNHU for sponsoring this episode, and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please consider leaving a like if you did, and consider subscribing if you haven't already. It really helps me out. I hope to see you all again soon, but until then, have a great day.